Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning and this afternoon for some of you. My name is Brad Horn. I'm the CEO and co-founder of PTS, or Portable Technology Solutions. I'm joined by Dan Peluso, the other co-founder, the brains behind the operation, CTO of PTS, and then Howard Heckman, one of our long-standing senior software engineers who's been with the company, I think it's over close to 20 years now. Today we're going to talk about, maybe the next slide, Howie, the RTLS engine that we're about to release for ClearStream initially. Then Dan himself is going to go through the features, give you a high level of what is going to be in the Rev 1 of the RTLS engine, and then we're going to actually do a demo similar to what we recently did at the TWA event in New York. We're going to show you how the product works, how you can upload maps and actually use it. And then we'll have the question and answer for everybody, because hopefully you guys get thoughts inspired and have some good questions for us. So first off, why an RTLS engine? We see a lot of RTLS systems out there, but this is an engine. What does that mean? We're developing as an engine so we can solve maybe the traditional inventory problems that are out there, and those are location based. We always think of an inventory as a shelf level or a aisle level, and it's kind of static. These are the problems that an inventory system has. If you have an inventory system for what you're keeping track of, those are problems. So maybe you're putting things on a shelf, you run out of space on that shelf and you put it somewhere else where there's more space, but the end user doesn't document that. They pull the available inventory in that one location, and then someone loses sight that there is more inventory in this other area that they never documented, and boom, they make another order. So we're out there trying to solve that type of inventory problem, as well as those things that are tracked in an organization may not even have a system or may not have a proper inventory system of locations. We're creating this engine so we can feed or integrate with other software systems or the PTS cloud to give location base for these critical assets and inventory items that is in close to or actual real time, as well as giving cookie crumbs and all these other great features that Dan's going to talk about. We're trying to keep the engine as simple as possible so anyone can use it. It's affordable, and it can be set up to do multiple things and feed multiple systems. And we're hoping to get this out in the first quarter of 2025 for consumption by our end users and new customers. Next slide, Howie. So when we think of new products, we also try to think of how we're going to use them. I have 10 years of manufacturing experience. Dan was in other areas, and Howie worked at odd jobs as a younger kid. And you always think of, how could I use this system that we're developing for these type of use cases that they may see? Maybe it's a pool company and they don't know where their equipment is and where it was left in a yard, or maybe it's a manufacturing company that has tools floating around and they don't really have an inventory system for that. Well, we also think about how we can use it at PTS and how we can demo it. And what immediately came to mind to us is, two scenarios just in our company that is not your traditional, hey, I'm going to go use an RTLS system company. As a software company, you don't really think of us as using an RTLS system internally, but we quickly thought of use cases for it. First with our demo pool, and we'll go through a little use case of that. And then with our NetSuite system, where we don't even really have the true blue inventory system, even though we keep inventory, we don't have those locations. So we saw this need for the engine to work with these systems, and then how could it work with them? And what's the use case and what's the ROI? And we quickly saw that there was a great ROI for both of these use cases in our own system. Next slide, Howie. So the first thing, Joe did a little acting for me. For those that don't know Joe, he's the head of our support area and does a lot of the mobile configurations for our customers. And we have what we call a demo pool at PTS that consists of thousands and thousands of dollars in hardware that we receive from Zebra, Feig, and other manufacturers. We use it for customer demos, internal demos, videos, software testing, internal support. And when people go to get this demo equipment, it's critical that it's there. And our employees are all engineers, so for them to go look around for something when they're trying to get something done, maybe by the end of the day, it's costly. And we, who don't have a true, powerful asset tracking system, except what we homegrown ourselves, we have what we call our demo system. It has locations, but it doesn't stop human intervention of someone taking something out of the room and when they're not supposed to. So our pain points are, the processes aren't followed by employees, commonly the developers, which you're about to see in the next slide. Our locations are dynamic. Some of this demo equipment may not fit in one room, it may go into another room. And then the developers, they'll just grab stuff. And that what this leads to is conflict. And we'll see that in the next slide with Joe. He's ready to kill Howie in this because he just spent an hour trying to find an FX 9600 that was not where it was supposed to be. And Howie grabbed it to go do some testing for some software bug that maybe he saw. So again, I think this problem is out there and everybody has it. And it's easily solved with a true RTLS system. So why we like RTLS at PTS and why we think we could use it internally as we release this. First off, we love the fact that it works directly, and our first release will be with the ATR 7000 by Zebra. Next, within the ATR, we can get locations within a read zone, and Dan's going to go through that, and Howie's going to go through that as well. The other thing is the use cases are limited. So once we install this ATR, we can, via the RTLS engine, start feeding data or this RTLS data, map data to other systems. And that data can be ingested by these systems and used to do different things. Maybe we can automate a checkout out of NetSuite, or we can mark something as received back in a demo pool based on how it moves through these predefined zones that we're going to set up. And then what's really exciting is you don't have to go back to a PC or log into your big system to see it or use it and have a license for every piece of software. You can run the engine individually on your phone. So maybe you have a worker out there who's looking for, like Joe, looking for a piece of equipment. He can just look on his phone and say, press a button, see what's last seen. Next slide, please. Another great use case, again, because it's an engine, we can feed data into systems that don't have an RTLS engine, but maybe should have some sort of mapping. For us, who use NetSuite, we have a low-end inventory module because we really don't store inventory, but we still have the need to see where things are, and we don't want our assets to float around or actually leave. So via the RTLS engine, we can feed data into a NetSuite or into an SAP or even into a QuickBooks to get this mapping data. So imagine you're running a QuickBooks and you want to see where an asset is. You can go in there, and we can see here, we added a little view RTLS location icon, and that pops up directly to your map. It is user configurable, like we said, so you can set it up to do different things. It doesn't do just what we say it's going to do. It's up to you what you want to do with it. You can configure it to handle different types of assets, people, assets, inventory. Maybe it's critical equipment in a hospital and you want to know where wheelchairs are. Maybe you want to set up rules that if something leaves the building, you want to send a fire an email to someone. These are all the things that you can do with the RTLS engine, and they can also feed that data, or it can feed that data to these pre-existing systems via the RIA API, which Howie may touch on a little bit, and Dan will. And finally, it'll integrate directly with the PTS cloud. So for those that don't have that back-end system and they may need something that's pretty simple to use and set up and handles their unique use cases. Anyway, with that being said, I don't want to go too much further. I'm going to flip it over to Dan to get the RTLS engine features out to you guys and show you what's going to be available in the first release.
All right, good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. Thanks, Brad, for that intro. So what I wanted to do is go through a fairly high level of some of the RTLS engine features, and then touch on, what they mean, to be honest, and then, how we see them evolving in the future. And then that will be followed by hopefully a demo that we can do. I'll just give fair warning that this product's still in development, so Howie, I don't want to put you on the spot in case there's any issues, but we should be okay, I think. So with that said, Howie, if you want to flip over to the first feature. So the first feature, which is kind of critical, obviously, is configurable maps. So we have introduced the idea of you uploading a map, whether it's an architectural drawing of your warehouse, or maybe it's a JPEG image of your office space, whatever it is, that space is unique to you. So we need you to define it. And when you bring that map in, what we need to allow you to do is define that space, right? So it's great you have a warehouse and you have all your aisles and shelves laid out, but we needed a way to give you definable zones, for example. So if you want to define your receiving area as, you know, these three trucking bays, and your shipping area is the three next to it, you can create those as zones, and you would drag and drop and draw on your map to create those zones. And those zones will become important in the next feature we talk about. Likewise with readers. So the ATR, as the first supported device, would be placed by you on your map, right? So the zone and coverage of that ATR is sizable and configurable, and some of that's driven by the height, you know, that you're going to place the ATR, or, you know, exactly what your environment introduces as variables allows you to control that. So that's the map. And then once you've defined the map, we can go ahead and move to the next slide, Howie. So the next thing you'd want to do is define some events that make sense to you. So at its basic, out of the box, you know, feature set for RTLS, we are recording a tag read, right? So at its simplest, a tag read gives you, like it currently does, it gives you positioning, it gives you the tag ID, and it gives you, you know, the power level, let's say. Before it gets to the RTLS engine, before it gets to the PTS cloud running the RTLS engine, it is massaged and improved and optimized through the RTLS engine. So once that transaction, we call it a transaction, comes over to RTLS, we record that. And then just after recording it behind the scenes, we also scan through your events, and your events are definable by you. So again, we're a fairly horizontal platform. So your vertical scenario might be different than a different customer's vertical scenario. So your events are defined by you, and they can be controlled by filters. So when you have a tag transaction come in, typically a tag read, you can say, well, if it's this ID, I want to fire this event. If it's this power level, I want to, you know, fire this other event. And those events are completely defined by you. There's no limit to the number of events. And each of those events can have an assigned action. And those actions, performance and how they fire is based on what type of event it is. So a client-side event, if you can see from this bullet, controls the real-time display of data. So you might be live monitoring your map on a browser, for example, and you need a pin to show up when a certain event fires. It would show up on your map as a real-time display. That's what we call client-side events. And again, those can be controlled by all different kinds of data filters for the incoming data, and also married to your data that we'll talk about in a minute. On the server side, the same thing. That event, the IoT transaction is recorded, right? So that's your audit trail. The event may fire if it satisfies the filter criteria. That event is also recorded. And then on the server side, it can actually execute an action to send an email, for an example, send a text message. Or what we anticipate is pretty popular is to be able to send a web service. So in Brad's example, you know, notifying NetSuite of some change via their API is completely definable within RTLS. And the cool thing is we're using a relatively new product of ours called RIA, which is a web service-based data synchronization tool. So we're you know, eating our own dog food, as they say. We're using a RIA mapping to create a web service triggering on this event. So it can notify NetSuite, it can notify Salesforce, it can be pretty much anything you want. Coming soon, probably not in V1, is event actions that can be fired right in your environment. So imagine turning on a GPO port of a certain reader based on a certain event. That's things we anticipate in a Rev 2. And with that event management, one of the things we did want to do too is allow the idea of a workflow. We're calling it chainable events or cascading events. In other systems, it's called a workflow, but basically what it means is event 1 and event 2 might be firing, and if they fire in a certain definable sequence or in a certain period of time, they can actually fire an additional event. You know, let's call it event 3. So we anticipate that being pretty popular because that would handle check-in, check-out type scenarios. It would handle move scenarios. you know, all those kind of things. So this idea of a chainable or cascading event is a pretty neat feature of the event management overall. And I talked about the action capabilities, but you have the browser side allowing, you know, showing and placement of pins and even triggering maybe different colors of that pin if a certain criteria is met. And on the server side, the webhook integration, I do think is probably going to be the most popular, but the email text notification is certainly in there. And like I said, every event, whether you choose to act on it or not, is recorded. So you get that sort of built-in audit trail, which, you know, for certain systems and certain of your requirements will be important, right? So I think next slide, Howie. The next thing is data management. So, you know, again, since we're a pretty horizontal app, we don't really know and don't really want to know what data you're tracking. So it could be your IT equipment, it could be your inventory, it could be your yard equipment, right? Your forklifts and bulldozers, or you know, whatever it might be. So one of the key requirements we decided this needed was a flexible data management interface. So in this interface, what you would be doing is saying, yeah, I know you're giving me the IoT ID or the tag identifier, and I'm going to associate that to my data based on that key field, right? So this tag identifier is going to, in my case, allow me to identify an asset. So I can attach my manufacturer and my serial number and maybe my you know, location to it in my live data, right? So that data might be residing in NetSuite, it might be in Salesforce, it might be in some homegrown tool in SQL Server. It doesn't really matter, but you can associate that data to our RTLS through this data management tool. And again, we're using RIA to allow you to make those mappings. This data by default is importable and exportable via drag and drop text files. And it also has exposed a web service endpoint for getting data. So from a technical perspective, it's a true HTTP GET to receive data on your side, or a post you can update, a post or patch really, you can update the data residing in our PTS cloud if you choose to do that. So, you know, the third point here is that it seamlessly integrates to that because it's all defined by you. So there's not, you know, other competing systems sometimes have that relatively hard coded and they leave it up to you to figure out how to marry it. We're trying to make that a lot easier and a lot more usable for the varied use cases we see. And then next slide, Howie. I think the one thing we don't have a bullet for is the RTLS engine itself. You know, we talked about it a little bit, but there is a layer in front of the, or just after the raw tag read, that allows you to use our engine to improve locationing. That's our goal, and that's why we chose the ATR as the first choice, because the data coming in from an ATR is it's just a ton of data that we then parse and analyze. I don't want to use the term AI, but we do analyze that data a bit to fine tune where we think it is before we send it over to our PTS cloud running the RTLS for ClearStream. So anyway, with that said, Brad brought up a good example of how we're using it in-house, and frankly, we're using it to test a lot of our stuff. I was able to talk a little bit about the features, so I'd like for Howie to now take over and kind of show you the combination of those, you know, those two segments with a live demo.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stan. Thanks, everybody. So I'm going to give a kind of a live demo here. It's going to be a high-level overview of the product and talk about some of the components of it. So I'm going to jump out of the PowerPoint here just to show you that. Now, I did want to briefly mention that there is a component of this that runs on site. That is the RTLS engine, like Dan kind of briefly touched on. It's the software that's sort of aggregating all of the reads from all of your equipment, calculating the best known location, and then feeding that to the cloud portal, to the ClearStream portal. So on my screen here, I have the cloud portal that I'll log into to actually show you the map configuration and see that data. But I did, again, just want to briefly mention the configuration that's done of the ATR itself. And that's using our ClearStream RFID product. So many of you on this webinar today probably are familiar with this software. The setup is very easy for this, and I kind of want to stress that a bit, that the setup for hooking up an ATR 7000 or going forward any of the other devices that we support into the cloud portal is a very simple process. And if you look at my configuration here, you can kind of see what I have set up. On the left-hand side here, I have my ATR 7000 with the different bits of information that the ATR 7000 captures with each one of those reads. On the right-hand side, I have the destination of where I'm sending the data. So just like any traditional ClearStream setup where you have a piece of equipment feeding some destination database, Excel workbook, sheet, text file, or anything like that, it's an ATR 7000 hooked up to the PTS RTLS cloud. So again, the configuration locally is very simple. I do want to stress that it's for getting up and running and seeing the performance of your system. It's actually a very simple setup in that you add the ATR 7000 to your ClearStream application, and you enter your username and password that you use for your portal to where it sends that data. So that again is over on my browser here, this ClearStream portal. So I did want to kind of just briefly touch on that. I won't go into the configuration there, but again, it's very simply enter the IP address of the ATR 7000 and then enter your username and password of your RTLS portal so that it's feeding that tag data that's already been kind of combed over, like Dan mentioned, to get the best known location. Briefly on the ATR 7000, for any of you that may not be familiar, the ATR 7000 is a nice product to start with because it's a fully integrated PoE device that you can install in a ceiling or up above a floor plan or something like that. And it has 97 directional antenna beams. And those 97 directional antenna beams are used in order to capture a general location of the tags below it. So that ATR 7000 is capturing that information. ClearStream is aggregating all of that data that it's capturing, trying to calculate the best known location, and then feeding the PTS RTLS portal so that you can view it in your map. So I did want to jump in before I do a configuration of the map. I did want to just kind of illustrate maybe how someone would find something if they already have it configured. So just jump into a pre-configured map that you guys can kind of see how you might find something. So here, if you go to the web portal here and log in with your credentials, it logs me into the portal. Now, important thing to note here, this is our standard portal for ClearStream RFID. So some of you may be familiar with this already if you are using the application. But when I log in, the first thing I'm presented with is all of the equipment that I have configured in my environment. So from this dashboard, I can see activity of all the devices, who's logging in to view the data. I can see which devices I currently have configured and that are online or disabled or things like that. Now you'll see from my configuration here, I have one ATR 7000 that I'm going to demo today, and it's currently online, it's currently scanning tags. So this is the ATR 7000 that I have configured within ClearStream. It's currently feeding the portal all of its RTLS data. I can see by the green it's online. I do have another ATR 7000 here, this ATR lobby. This one's not currently on, so I can see that it's disabled. So this is the one ATR 7000 that I have configured in ClearStream, and it's feeding the portal all of the tag data that it's calculating the best position of. So again, I can see all the statuses of these portals here. On the left-hand side, there's a whole bunch of different options for your account information, the data that you're configuring within your environment and all that sort of stuff. But for today, what I wanted to jump into is the mapping portion, because that's what we're here to talk about. Now, let's just say, going back to the example that Brad had mentioned of Joe coming in here and yelling at me for taking the device. I still swear it was planted in here, so I was being blamed for something. But if he were to use the RTLS engine to find that, he can go ahead and log into the portal and click on the Maps Live View here. The Maps Live View will then load all of the maps that you have configured within your environment. So I have a number of different ones here that are kind of pre-set up: PTS Lab, Warehouse 1, Warehouse 2, and the PTS floor plan. So these are all the maps that I already have configured. And if you were to look for something, you can go ahead and select the map that you'd like to try to find that particular product. So for my case here, I'm going to jump on the PTS floor plan, open up this map, and now I can look at the PTS space here to try to find an item. So what you'll notice here is that the demo room, I currently have one ATR 7000 set up to track that room. You'll see that the name of it is the demo room ATR. And the reason that's important is that's the reader that I have configured in ClearStream that's feeding the tag data to the cloud. So I know that if that ATR that I've configured is pointing to this room in our environment, and I can see the tags that it's actually actively tracking right now. So you can see these are moving around. If I were to select any of these here, I can see what the tag is. This one here is a Sony Bravia TV. Here is a GE device, TCL S4. I'm not sure what some of these are, TVs and things for our demo equipment. But you can see that the tags are being tracked by the equipment. I can also click on this one here. This is a Zebra FX9600. So look, I'm able to see that I have an FX9600, according to this data that's being reported, sitting on this table here in the demo room. So I can actively see that. If I scroll down to the bottom of this, I can actually see a data view of all of the items that are in the environment for that map. And I can go ahead and select one if I'd like. So there's different devices here, so I can look, if I was Brad, to say, oh, look, I need to find a Zebra FX9600. Oh, there's one in here. I can go ahead and look for that, or I can pick one of these other items. Now, this data here is supplied just as Dan mentioned. It's imported into the system. It's based on what you guys need. It's also configurable. So in my case here, I'm tracking manufacturer, model, serial number, and things like that. But you could configure it to be employee badges, maybe. Maybe you want to track employees within your environment. So you can go ahead and just track those employees that you'd like, or any other bits of equipment. All of that data is kind of configurable, and you can feed that data into the system. So you can do a couple different things. You can just import it via drag and drop of like a text file. You can use our RIA sync engine to sync that data over to the portal from a third-party system using just web services. But you can get all of that data, and then if you're looking on the map, you can see all of the data that's within that map itself. So again, these are live tags that I'm tracking within my environment. So the important part to note here is that, excuse me, if you're looking for this data and you're seeing it in the map here, this is actually being currently recorded. So I know it's there. Unless it's a label that might have been ripped off, I know it's the equipment that's being scanned at that time. So that's why you can see these tags moving around in that environment. And I'm able to look at that, click on it, and see what they are. So you can see their EPC IDs, what equipment had reported the tag, the zone information, signal strength, all of that sort of fun stuff. It shows me what these tags are in the environment. I can filter this down to see what I'd like to, all of those sorts of things. So I did want to demonstrate that just really quickly, is that the portal allows you to come in here, go to the live view, select the floor or the map that you'd like to find information on, filter down to a specific tag that you're looking for, or just look at that environment and click on things to see what they are as they're moving throughout the facility. So now just to back out, I'm going to go ahead and just talk about some of the configurations of the map, just to show you how easy it is to configure a map. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the details today. Some of it is still being finalized in development, just such as the event reporting, but I'm going to talk to that a little bit about how you can use that. So to configure a map, you jump over to the configure form. It looks just like the live view, but it has different properties for actually configuring everything in your environment. So again, I have a bunch of different floor plans here that I already have configured. If I want to create a new one, I just go ahead and click the plus button here. I'm going to go ahead and give it a name. So we'll call it the webinar room. I select the file that I'd like to use. Now this is just any PDF, image file, PNG, JPEG, things like that. But you go ahead and select whatever you'd like. And you would do this for each floor plan or each location where you'd like to track these environments. So now here I can go ahead and save my map. If I were to refresh this, you'll see I'll have a new location that's accessible both in the configure as well as the live view. I don't have anything yet configured in this map, but it is now available here to start placing equipment in zones and defining the whole process of how I'd like to track things. So a little bit about the top up here. The main toolbar where you select and drag items onto it are up at the top here. For Rev 1, we're releasing it with ATR 7000 support. So the devices are just the one device at this moment. But these devices will be configurable to different pieces of equipment. Excuse me. So the important part I'd like to make mention there, here I'll drag one ATR 7000 out, is that different pieces of equipment will have different tracking capabilities. So like I mentioned before, the ATR 7000 allows you to track based on 97 directional antennas that are built into the equipment. Not all devices have that. You know, your standard FX9600 or Impinj R720, they have a lower number of antenna ports available to them, but we still envision those being able to report location data to the map so that you can get it maybe in a different sort of way, maybe not as granular necessarily as the ATR 7000, where it's capturing those tags as they move throughout the area below them. But imagine, say, at this doorway that you can see on my screen here, you want to hook up a FX9600 portal type setup. You'll be able to drag that into this environment and place it there. And then any tag data that's recorded going through that, that portal can be recorded and then displayed at the map. So you can see historically what's gone through that portal, as well as real time if things happen to pop up, because you can put a decay on these tags too, so that when something's there, it's being recorded, but it'll slowly fade out if it's not recorded by the equipment. So from a portal perspective, you could scan tags that are going through a portal, and if they're there recently, you'll be able to see it. Another important thing to note here is the zone configuration. The zone configuration is a little bit different than the devices. So you can define areas on your map, say zone 1, zone 2. And the important thing with those are you can set up rules when things move from zone 1 to zone 2. So back to that FX9600, if you were to outfit this portal with, say, 2 antennas, a zone 1 on the inside with a zone 2 on the outside, you can set up then a custom event so that the data being recorded in the system are things like directionality. Maybe a tag went from zone 1 to zone 2, so record that in the database as a transactional record so you can see when a particular item transited across that space. Or imagine putting an ATR over the same space and dividing it by 2 separate zones. Any tag read on the inside is in zone 1. Any tag read on the outside is zone 2. So we can easily take that data that's being recorded based on the zones you've configured in the map to specify a new event for something happening, which can create just a database entry. It could feed through those webhooks over to a third-party system, so you can get an event in that system, because maybe that other system can't necessarily store RTLS data, but it can get an event of something leaving or coming back. That can be sent out through that RIA engine to a third-party system. It could also just store it simply as another transactional record within the PTS cloud or this RTLS cloud portal here, so that you keep track of that those transactions of items moving throughout the facility, as well as getting the RTLS sort of XY sort of coordinates amongst your area. So I'll just go ahead and add some of these. You can see I'm basically just dragging and dropping new ATRs into the environment. Now, a couple things to know here. You would either place these and then position the ATRs, or maybe you could put the ATRs and then place these. What we like about this is it's set up so that you can do it very easily and test the performance in your environment, because our intention here is to have this also as a trialable application or product, so that you can see the performance of an ATR in your environment and get up and running with capturing that location data very quickly. So really you're just kind of dragging and dropping, maybe expanding the coverage area of the ATR based on how high maybe your ceiling is or how high the ATR is mounted. You're changing that the size of these based on whatever maybe testing you've seen in your environment, so you can adjust these. So I can just add all of this equipment to what I'd like to track, maybe add another one down here or something like that. So I'm just dragging and dropping where my equipment is on the map. At any one point, I can go ahead and save this. These areas here, I do want to configure some properties for them. So this one might be stockroom reader 1. This one might be stockroom reader 2, and so on. You're just configuring the attributes of all of these devices in your environment, so that that tag data that's being fed to it from the ClearStream product, it knows where to place those tags in your environment. So a couple things about the rest of this configuration here. Excuse me. It's all drag and drop. Obviously, you can see it's just kind of placing things in your environment, uploading floor plans, saving those floor plans, and viewing that data in live view. From the right-hand side, you can configure, again, all of the properties of these things. So this ATR 7000, you'd give it a name. This one might be stockroom R3, and so on. You're just naming all of these, configuring some of the other attributes of them. Rotation of the device. The ATRs have a true north value, so you might need to turn the device if you can't position them like this. This little black hash mark on the top, that indicates the north position of the ATR. So you would just want to make sure that the hardware, when you install it, is pointed to the same wall with that north direction. Beam pattern, the ATR 7000 supports a number of different beam patterns. I won't go into that too much today, but based on your environment or testing of scan performance, you might need to switch that. The most common will be left-hand circular. You can also change the image of these ATRs if you wanted to put a little icon or something. You can set an icon ID, which is specified in the Images tab here, which I'll jump over to next. The Images tab here allows you to define, build out an image library for your floor plan. So the important thing here is that you can apply image rules to your tags. So you might be tracking employees, so you might want to have a little employee icon. You might be tracking forklifts, so on the map you want to display a forklift. So you would just build out your image library here of all the different things that you'd like to display on the map, and then through this tag tab here is where you actually can set up rules for all of your tags. So for the tags for mine, I can go ahead and set up a new rule maybe that says something like forklift. That might be something like if the tag ID maybe starts with 1, 2, 3. If the tag starts with 1, 2, 3, we can go ahead and set a color for that tag or set an image or maybe even run a custom script. So you can define rules for the tags as they're in your map. So most common ones we believe right now are going to be maybe different colors for the pins. So you don't just see black circles on your map, you'll see different colors, as well as the images. So forklift you might want to see on the image or on the map when a forklift is moving throughout a facility. So these are the basic setups for your map. You can, there's no limit to the number of maps that you can configure here. As you add floor space or different areas that you'd like to track, you can just add them as maps here, upload them, and start configuring your environment. So really, that's all I wanted to go into today. I'm not going into the events or anything that you have configurable within this environment, just the map configuration to show you guys how you can kind of get up and running with that stuff. But I did want to kind of show the different bits of the setup. There's the ClearStream setup where you're hooking up your ATR to your account, and you're going to do that for as many ATR 7000s or going forward different types of devices that you have in your environment, just mapping them to the PTS RTLS cloud, and then you create your maps. You just upload a floor plan, drag and drop the devices that you're configuring, and the zones. You're specifying the zones to logically break things out within your environment. These zones could probably match almost the rooms in some cases that you have configured. And I'll just go back over to the live view for my PTS floor plan, just to track where Joe is now, see if he's on the hunt for me. But yeah, so this is kind of everything that I wanted to show you guys. The live view, actually, maybe just one other thing to mention. We're in the last seen sort of mode. There's also real-time mode here. So real-time mode will show you tags that are only visible at that moment. Last seen is where they've last been recorded in the system. And there's a couple other cool things on the right-hand side for your live view map. You can change how quickly the map refreshes using the data request rate. You can change that. You can change the pin lifespan. So I mentioned before about how pins can fade out when you're in real-time view, and if the tag hasn't been scanned in a while. You can specify that lifespan as you're looking at the map. So if a tag pops up, you'll see it for, in this case, 30 seconds before it fades away and disappears from the map unless it's scanned by more equipment in your environment. And another cool one here is this tag history count. Right now it's set to 1, which just means, excuse me, show only the last tag scan from that's recorded by the equipment in the map. So this gives you the effect here that you see where you have just the circles for where the pins are located. If you were to bump this up to say 5, you'll see the last 5 entries for those tags, as well as a little line that shows the movement of the tag. So that's kind of cool. If you're trying to track the movement of something throughout your environment, you can see the kind of trail for where that circle moves, and it'll have more data available here. And it's really cool for if you filter down to a specific tag, because you can see that data tracking. So I think that's everything that I wanted to show for the demo today. I hope it gives everybody a good idea of how easy it is to kind of set up these maps and also configure ClearStream to feed the maps with the tag data. But really, we're hoping to make this something that's really kind of easily accessible for people to get up and running with these ATR 7000s, install the equipment, configure ClearStream very easily, and then look and configure the map so you can see data right away. Really, we want you to see the performance in your environment for this RTLS data, to see how it works for scanning the tags in your environment, and make it that kind of seeing that data very easy, very simple setup for ClearStream and then your map configurations. So with that, let me jump back over to the PowerPoint. We did, I think, have a question and answer period here. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to send them over in the question panel. Bear with me while I try to open this up. It looks like there are some questions already.
I'll help you out here, Howie, a little bit. This is Brad. And I just wanted to add something. We're looking at the Rev 1 of, the min release, what we think we're going to get out. There's a lot of work going into the baseline for the product. So, the future of this is really exciting. In the data we're going to be capturing, Tracer Plus, the mobile component, will be integrated into the engine or have an engine availability. So again, it's all selectable within the other products, whether you want to utilize the RTLS engine, and then that license would be available to you. So anyway, if you guys want to put any questions in there, that'd be great. The first question, which for me, at times it gets a little confusing where things are within the product, because we have our ClearStream product, which is feeding the data and managing the readers. And then we have the RTLS engine where we're setting up rules. There's some crossover there with certain features, especially within the readers. So the question is, do you have a GPIO port or on the ATR for events, i.e. simple go, no goes? So I thought maybe you guys could talk first a little bit about how we work with GPIOs and where we're going with the GPIOs for the RTLS engine.
Yeah, sure. I think I can hop in on that one. So like Brad had mentioned, there's two sides of the product. There's the ClearStream product, which is doing the calculation of the data, feeding then the map on the map side. ClearStream has always had support for GPIO ports on all of the equipment that we support. So it's very common to use ClearStream to be set up for things like a photo eye that trips a read to scan for 10 seconds, capture all tag data for those 10 seconds and feed it to the destination, as well as powering up the outputs on those ports to do things like tags scanned that's not supposed to go through a portal. Okay, we'll power up a light stack, maybe a red light with a buzzer, and make those sounds. So we've always supported those there, and you can do that now currently. The one thing that we're doing, I think Dan had this on one of his slides, that was going to be for a Rev 2, is being able to control those GPIOs, or really the outputs for the buzzers and things like that, from the mapping portion. So almost communicating back from the mapping portion, which has your events and things like that, back to ClearStream to power up the output light or buzzer on that device. So that's going to be a Rev 2 feature. It is partially there in that you can configure the GPIOs, just unrelated to the map data that's happening within the cloud portal currently. So that's where the map data will be able to feed and control those GPIOs for some sort of physical indication of what's going on, or visual indication of what's going on at the portal that's being controlled by the map. So that'll be a Rev 2. It won't be going out in our first release. However, it could be augmented or controlled by some of the other events that will be in Rev 1, which is like an email or an SMS type alert. So we won't necessarily power up a light on Rev 1 at the ATR or the portal, but we can, through our events that we're configuring, which will be a Rev 1 release, can, based on, say, a tag going from zone 1 to zone 2 that's maybe not supposed to, or maybe you just want to be notified anytime it happens, it can send out an email to whoever you like to notify of that situation.
The next question, I guess I'll go at it a little bit, and maybe you guys can back me up on it. But besides the ATR, do we need a license from Zebra before using the PTS solution? And this is an important philosophy we have about how we develop our software. And we don't, to date, have the requirement to use, let's say, Zebra class software or other licenses to utilize our software. It becomes very complex for us when we're depending on other softwares to feed our software. There's too many throats to choke, let's say, too many fail points. And I showed the NetSuite screen. Even managing subscriptions, embedded in subscriptions, becomes a real tough thing for a software company to do. And you as an end user, it becomes even harder. We all know that our personal lives and in our business lives, where SaaS is becoming, it's great, it's amazing, turn it on, turn it off, get the latest features, no worrying about upgrading and doing installs. But at the same point, it becomes sometimes tough to manage. So we definitely do not want to become dependent on another license with the RTLS engine. What we will do is allow you to feed that data to another solution, though. I don't know if you guys want to add to that a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. For a lot of reasons, we don't like to rely on outside services, whether they're licensed or not. But in reality, sometimes there's a solution out there that does serve our requirements well. So what we would like to do, and this would be true for RTLS too, I imagine, is allow them to contribute to us. So if you decide that you're going to, on your own license that piece of software and they can feed the data to us, great. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to. That's typically the way we approach those kind of things. And that's what I'd expect, going forward with this too.
I'm going to jump over to a question. First question I'm seeing here is, if you want to run a demo, how do we go about doing that? So just so everybody's aware, we're starting to do alpha demos right now in facilities. And then, like we said, it's going to be releasable. We have a demo pool. Zebra has a demo pool for the ATRs. Our software is free to try for 30 days. So you could download after the release the ClearStream engine within ClearStream, and you'll have 30 days to use it. And then whether you've licensed ClearStream with the engine or without, that's your call. That would be treated on one contract. But you can talk to your reseller or talk directly to PTS to get the lay of the land and how to get that demo in place.
I just see a question about the file types. I just wanted to address. We're currently supporting PNG and JPEG. We do have some plans for, PDF and some of the CAD formats, but that's not planned for Rev 1. So that would, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Howie, it's just JPEG and PNG right now, right?
Right, JPEG, PNG, sort of image file formats, no
image
CAD or
first files, right? Yeah, exactly. And then there was a question about taken out of service. So one of the events that the RTLS engine would be feeding, or I don't know if we have it added just yet, but it will be by release, is the concept of no longer read, right, or no read type scenario. I think that's addressing the piece of equipment taken out of service. So
yeah, just so I can read the question a lot, just the question, just so everybody's aware, is if a piece of equipment you are tracking is taken out of service, are you able to remove that and show that it's not available? So yeah, to Dan's point, yeah, one of the events that's in ClearStream is reporting when a tag is no longer visible. That's definable by you and your configuration for how long you want to keep track of a tag, and that can report an event to the service to say, hey, this tag is missing. So it could be flagged as that missing or no longer available.
Yeah, that's one of our important use cases, to be honest, because we do have existing customers who have asked for that scenario. Hey, I have a secure equipment that needs to be within this read zone, and if it's not, I need to know about it right away. Whether it's a security concern or a theft type concern, it doesn't matter necessarily, but that has been requested before. So that's important for us to to try to do correctly.
There's a question here, and I'm going to give it my best shot, then you guys can correct me. But is the PTS RTLS server envisioned as cloud only, or will an on-site option be available in the future? Like all of our software, we understand that different people have different data security needs. That's something that we are seeing. It's increasing exponentially every year, the amount of security in place. So we understand the need to have on-site. We've recently developed a practice of allowing, even supplying servers with our software on there, so you can run your own hosted version of our software locally. It's still a SaaS model, but it would be local to you. With RTLS, there's a lot of variables in how much data we can process back and forth, and what's the granularity of data you need, and how much tag data you're going to use. So, and how much we're going to be processing on your cloud. So with that being said, maybe Howie and Dan can talk a little bit about those variables and how that it could impact where we're hosting for our customer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure of the technical level of the audience here. I assume it's mixed, but from a technical perspective, running it on site versus in our cloud is a non-factor, right? You would just change your sort of pointers to where your installs are. From a security and an intellectual property perspective, there's some concerns we have there with releasing this code off of our cloud, but we are working to do that because we do recognize between government and military and just other secure sensitive customers that they can't operate in a cloud environment either 100% or they're very restricted. So we are aware of that sort of scenario, and we're looking at how we can address that, right? To allow this to be essentially an installable on-site sort of solution. Like I said, it's not a technical challenge as much as it is sort of an installation and code management kind of challenge. But we are definitely considering that because we do have a lot of customers in that scenario.
I have a question here, if I may, that just popped up. And this one I think is an important point to make. Is the question is, can I use the PTS RTLS engine with an Impinj X-Ray? The Impinj X-Ray is actually one of the products that we were initially looking at as to support right out of the box alongside of the ATR 7000, because they're similar products. The X-Ray has less beams with it, but it's a similar type form factor, PoE, install it in the ceiling, everything's kind of all in one. But it's a good question because the way we designed our RTLS engine, going back to the point of using the class software for Zebra, which we're not using, we wrote our RTLS engine to be able to receive data from different type of equipment and being agnostic to that equipment. So we're not using class on the Zebra side. For Impinj X-Ray, we're just receiving that raw data. Now, we don't currently have the drag and drop solution for the X-Ray where it actually predefines that cone shape with the 97 positions, but that's something that we'll add to it for the number of antennas for the X-Ray. And there's no other change really than that to make the system work. The X-Ray is actually one of the products, again, we were looking at in order to support right out of the box, and we thought it would be a big differentiator with this RTLS system in that we can be fed data from any one of those types of equipment. So it's a good question just to illustrate that we want more devices to be able to feed their location data into this RTLS engine and not be locked down to particular equipment. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be RFID. We're actually looking at, since we support BLE as an option, being able to do true triangulated BLE scanning and reporting into the portal as well. Even barcode data. We want to be able to feed, or we've envisioned feeding actual data that doesn't necessarily have XY location to our mapping, but maybe just location like a cube. So maybe when you're doing an inventory or asset audit of different IT equipment, you scan a cube, then scan all of the equipment there, feed that data back to the map. Now, it might not be XY coordinate, but it's, what's in that cube based on the last scan. So we want to kind of provide different types of equipment feeding into this RTLS engine. So it's not just an ATR 7000, and it's not just a particular manufacturer, it's other types of devices that are feeding that location data into this engine, whether it's very granular data or maybe just a generic location that like a barcode scan could provide.
Yeah, that's definitely an important point. We targeted the ATR as a first release just because it's sort of low-hanging fruit, but Brad mentioned the exciting long-term vision of this, and there's a lot there, right? So the BLE or even GPS data or barcode data, that's all envisioned as what I sort of slipped up and I said IoT transactions. If anybody heard me say that, that's truly why I said it, is because it's not really just RFID we're planning. We're planning a sort of IoT generic support. So BLE, RFID, GPS, whatever it might be. Just to add to the comment Howie had, that's not what we're targeting for V1. Similar, the X-Ray is actually, is that end of life, Howie?
Yeah, I believe it's end of life. So that's why we were, maybe a little disheartened in that being the case, but we'll still go ahead and add it to the configuration because we support all of Impinj devices anyway. And really just the difference between that device and the ATR 7000 beyond performance is the number of antenna beams. It's 22 beams or something like that, I forget, but it's less beams, but for our perspective, to add it would just be a different type of device that you drag onto the map, and it assigns those beams to fewer, in that case, areas on your map to track that data. So it's maybe a little less accurate.
Okay. There's one more question. I wanted to get this one out there, and it's a really good question, and I'm thinking you could almost use it as is with reference tags. But the question is, does the solution incorporate reference tags to monitor the location performance and provide an indication of reduced performance and how to improve it? I can't see the tail end of the question, but it gets me thinking about your idea of zoning. And for those that don't know, the idea of a reference tag, it's really a calibration tag to see that your system is showing the tags in the right location. And RFID, very environmental dependent. So if someone moves like a piece of metal into the middle of a room, like a big giant sheet of metal, it could theoretically block all the tags being read on the other side of the metal. So if you start placing reference tags, and this is a question to Dan and Howie, and hopefully you can add this, but this idea of the reference tag, you could almost create zones or events around those reference tags. So if a reference tag all of a sudden isn't being read or is outside of the zone, you could almost alert the system manager saying your system's out of calibration. Is that something that, I mean, we were even thinking about, but it seems interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the lazy answer for me would be that you can probably do that with events and cascaded events. And, if reference tag equals, is present and my tag also is close to that same power or whatever, you can probably trigger an event saying, hey, it is near this reference tag. That I'm calling that a lazy answer because we haven't really tested that, but we do have that idea of reference tags in mind. And one of the things that I think will evolve with zones is that zones can be defined by the presence of, the reference tag at a certain power, for example. So if you're within that reader, antenna, and power, you would be considered within that zone. And like I said, I feel like you could probably do that with events as they exist now, but I think we would probably, almost even from the user interface perspective, make that more specifically definable with reference tags, because that concept is great, right? That's been around since barcoding. You scan a barcode, then scan whatever's near it and mark it as that location, right? So that's always been there, and I think incorporating that in a more sort of UI layer would make sense, but it's not. It won't be that deep in V1. But like I said, I think you could do it in events right now.
All right. There's a couple other questions. They're a little more tech, I guess, vertical, like the whether we need to be a partner to install. I think anyone can install an ATR. It's whether Zebra allows you to buy the ATR. I will reference something. I use it in my own personal life. Never use the tile guy to do your plumbing. I have a tub now moving around because the tile person who did my install of tile said he could do the plumbing. I would say RFID is the same thing. You want to make sure you have an RFID expert, at least overseeing your projects, or in a company like PTS or one of our authorized resellers involved with the selection. But the ATR installation, it's power over Ethernet. You can place it in the ceiling and start calibrating yourself. But you get into tags, simple things that can throw a system off. I think it's important to have someone who has a lot of experience in seeing the different things that can impact an RFID system. And again, the technology is still moving very quickly, especially on the RFID inlay side. I think that's about it. I don't know if you guys want to add anything. Personally, I'm really excited. Great webinar. I think a lot of great info, and we really want to encourage you, our end users and resellers, to give us feedback where you see the product going and what you'd like to see in it, whether it be technology or features. We really depend on your creativity to inspire us to bring the next generation of our software out, so it's usable and affordable and really flexible to solve a lot of problems. Anything, Dan, Howie, in closing you want to add?
I think that's about right. But just to highlight it, even more, we do rely on that feedback, especially with a product like this, and especially us being very horizontal in markets, right? We have such rare and interesting use cases that we didn't necessarily think about because they're not quite as common. So if you do have feedback, and if you guys have any history with us, we're very receptive to that feedback. A product like this is ripe for that. That we definitely look forward to that. So we're writing the engine to be very flexible, but could we tighten it? Could we drill it down to make it easier to configure in a certain environment? Those kind of things for sure. I would definitely add.
And with that being said, I'm going to add a little bit of the sales side of me to it. There will be promotional pricing available. I think in a few weeks, it's going to be our pre-release pricing, heavily discounted for your first year using the RTLS engine. Obviously, you're going to need the ATR, so talk to your, if you have a reseller, talk to that PTS reseller, and they can help set you up with everything. FX 7500s and 9600s are around the corner, so that's next round, and the R720. So there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff you can do with it. But I would encourage you, to talk to us if you're looking at this as a serious thing, so we can get you in line in the promotional pricing area. All right. I don't see anything else, so we're going to close it up at this time. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks everyone.